Good morning, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your very first hurricane outlook and discussion for the newly released HurricaneTrack app for iPhone, iPod Touch. And yes, it will work on an iPad, though it is not specifically designed for the iPad. This hurricane outlook and discussion for Wednesday, August 1st, 2012. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the graphics, show you what's going on out there. First, a look at climatology. Where we are here around August 1st, pretty low hurricane and tropical storm activity overall, but you know where we're headed, an increase peaking around September the 10th, a secondary peak in mid-October, and then finally a tertiary peak there in November, right towards the end of the season. Looking at the points of origin for all tropical storms and hurricanes during the first 10 days of August, you see how the tropical Atlantic begins to open up. A lot more development out there. Eastern Pacific stays busy. And you notice too that the Eastern Caribbean Sea, a void of development during this first 10 days. Typically, if we don't have development by the time it enters the Caribbean, those systems usually delay until they reach the central to western Caribbean. And that has a lot to do with the pressure patterns and the proximity to South America and a lot of other complicated factors. You also notice the Gulf of Mexico pretty active, as is the area off the southeast coast, with different developments over the last 100 years or so. Some of these related to fronts that come down, cold fronts that develop weak areas of low pressure that eventually go on to become tropical cyclones. All right, looking at 99L out in the Atlantic, here it is, based on the National Hurricane Center's graphical tropical weather outlook. Another tropical wave right here, and a third one about to move off of Africa. There's also another tropical wave sitting in here. A lot of wind shear and generally upper level winds kind of going like this around what's called a tropical upper tropospheric trough, a fancy way of saying very unfavorable conditions. If we look at the SHIP's diagnostics here, the SHIP's model output, SHIP meaning Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction, it initializes 99L at 30 knots. So it's almost a tropical depression. In 12 hours it has it at tropical storm strength, then steadily strengthens on to 43, 48, finally up to 51 and 52 knots as it presumably enters the Caribbean Sea via the Windward Islands. If we look at the UK Met model out of England here, it shows it weak and then moderate, intense, and then back to weak again, possibly indicating that it would become a hurricane briefly. But then I think this weak portion right in here is indicative of increasing shear and negative conditions in the Caribbean Sea. Now, the UK Met also note it is forming it at T plus 48 hours from last night, the initial conditions, and it pops it at 13.8 north, 57.2 west, or just east of the Windward Islands region. Weak, moderate, intense, and then back to weak again. So we'll see how that works out. The bottom line is that the intensity model's fluctuating a little bit because they're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Remember, this area of the Caribbean Sea, typically not favorable. Over 100 years, we've never seen something form in this region. So this is going to have to get going before it reaches this area, or it may not get going at all. Now these are the model plots from the Storm Pulse maps, and you can see a variety of spread, not too wide, even in the 5-day period. We've certainly seen worse, where you see storms curve like that, and some of them over here, and the spread between the two can be 2,000 or 3,000 miles, it seems. Fairly tightly clustered, showing a track through basically the windward to southern Leeward Islands. Really the Lesser Antilles is what we're talking about. Some of the different tracks on the north side of the Greater Antilles, but a majority of these tracks right into the Caribbean Sea. Now, if we look at the satellite picture, we can tell pretty good S-shape to the system. That's what I like to look for. And it's trying to get its act together. There's still some pretty dry air sitting out here, and this being a fairly large circulation, as it grows, it taps that dry air. But over here, there's warmer and warmer water and a slightly more favorable environment. And we can see that on the tropical cyclone heat potential page here, this map. Once we get into this teal color, I guess that's teal, aqua, something like that, not quite teal, This is where the heat content in the ocean and thus vertical instability or moisture in the atmosphere begins to increase just enough so that once the tropical low gets into this area, we should start to see it blossom a little bit more and slowly organize and develop. I don't see anything that indicates rapid development, but folks in the Windward Islands, you need to be ready for possible tropical storm conditions coming up in about 72 hours or so. Now this is the GFS, the Global Forecast System computer model, valid for 48 hours from now. Actually this morning, this is the 2 a.m. run, or what we call the 6Z run. Down here in the corner is the tropical system, the tropical low. You can see it right there. And this is the Lesser Antilles here, southern Windward Islands right there. 48 hours from now, we see it just starting to come into the picture. At 72 hours, it crosses through the southern Windward Islands here. The GFS not showing it very organized. It doesn't look that impressive. So this gives me reason to believe that it would not be a very strong system, which is good news, obviously. However, a period of squally weather, possibly tropical storm conditions moving through, and then you see at 96 hours, this will be valid on Sunday at around 2 a.m. Eastern Time, the low just skirting the north part of the South American coast there, so really close to land. Folks in the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, you might want to watch this pretty closely, but the GFS not showing it very well organized, even at 120 hours, day 5, just a large, broad area of low pressure down here. You don't even see it closed off necessarily. So the GFS not indicating a very strong system, which is good news. And the upper level winds, though, at day 5, they don't look too bad. We don't see any strong southwesterly winds cutting across like this. More so, the wind's pretty light and variable. What we're looking for are any strong winds like this you see here, where there's lots of barbs, wind barbs on these flags here, or flags on the barbs, I guess I should say. Pretty light upper level winds through the region. I think the proximity to South America and the fact that it can draw in drier air, if you believe that, off the continent. I guess if it's not water, then it is drier air. It just doesn't have that much of a chance to develop. Now, if it can survive and get into the Western Caribbean over here, it has a chance to develop further, but when it comes through this region, it's going to have a little bit of a tough time. Nonetheless, you folks in the Windward Islands need to be ready, at least for some squally conditions. You never know as it passes through. Maybe it'll become a tropical storm. We'll see. But nothing that I see suggests, at least heavily, that this will become a hurricane. So no hurricane threat, at least from what I can see, looming with this system. Alright, so I went a little longer than I will usually go on these tropical outlooks for the app. I'm going to try to make them as concise as possible, but I wanted the first one to give you a good overview of what all I can cover with these graphics, the telestration, and hopefully illustrating to you the goings-on in the tropics in a way that you can understand without hyping it up. You know, if something's going to be strong, I'll tell you it's going to be strong. If it's going to be weak and not much of a concern in terms of the impacts, then that's what we're going to talk about. No reason to sensationalize things and try to scare you with a bunch of hocus-pocus nonsense. When the hurricanes come, when we know it's a matter of time, we'll certainly address those issues as needed. These video blogs will be posted every day of the week. Sometimes, when conditions warrant, if there's a landfalling threat possible, I will do more than one per day. And my plan is to put a tweet out on Twitter. I just love saying that. I wish it had a different name. It's a great service, but I just can't get used to that name. I will post a tweet every day when this video blog is up, and eventually the app will have a push notification to let you know that the blog is in there, and you can watch it right there on HurricaneTrack on your iPhone, your iPod Touch, or maybe even your iPad. So look forward to these video blogs every day of the week. And there'll be exceptions when I take a day off or something, but I'll let you know the day before that I won't be here that day, so you'll be up to date. Alright, well, I very much appreciate you purchasing the app. I hope it is useful for you. I'm going to produce another video later today going over all the different features of the app and what you can expect from it. Again, I am Mark Studdiff for HurricaneTrack.com. Thank you very much for your support, and I'll see you again in a future video update.